It was my first Sunday off in almost 3 weeks, and all I wanted to do was sit on the balcony with a glass of iced tea and forget that the world exists. But the universe has a way of putting certain types of people in your life just to test your patience. And this woman, well, she seemed to have made a pact with the devil to turn any peaceful day into a saga of hatred and disrespect. It started with a message in the association group, a long text, one of those that the person clearly wrote with a heart full of resentment and a caps lock on their soul. It talked about visual pollution, threats to the harmony of the rural community, and elements that destroy the aesthetic balance of the shared environment. In short, she didn't like my farm. Yes, my farm, the one that has been there since before most of these houses were built, the one where my great-grandfather raised horses, where my father planted corn, and where I currently look after a few head of cattle and maintain everything with the utmost respect for the law. Not least because, you see, I am the law. County sheriff for 5 years, elected and re-elected, with the support of those who matter. The people who really live here, not those who buy houses with inflatable pools and think that smelly soil is an environmental crime. But his wife wasn't satisfied. Ever since she moved, everything was a reason to get upset. The sound of the tractor, the smell of the hay, the dust that rises when the oxen pass by, anything was a personal offense. And that Sunday she decided to take the next step, an audacious step, an absolutely idiotic step. I woke up to the sound of tires on gravel. When I looked out of the window, I saw it. Orange cones, easels, yellow tape, the kind you use at a crime scene, all planted right at the main entrance to my farm. As if it were a police blockade, but improvised, pathetic, with cardboard glued down and a notice written in pen. Community interdiction for rural irregularities. I stood there looking at it for a good few seconds, trying to absorb the absurdity. Then I walked there, slowly, like someone entering a bad play. The cones were the kind you buy in a hardware store. The trestles had adhesive tape stuck to them crookedly. And the yellow tape, well, she used one of those Halloween decoration tapes with skulls on it. It really was an exquisite piece of legality. The woman appeared on the other side of the street as if she had prepared for the moment. She was wearing a reflective vest, sunglasses, and a clipboard. Yes, a clipboard, filled with printed sheets of supposed HOA regulations that she probably made up in Word at 2 in the morning. The property is temporarily off limits for evaluation of compliance with Sector 3 landscape standards, she said with a tone that tried to sound official, but just sounded ridiculous. I didn't reply immediately. I looked to the sky for a divine sign, an answer from beyond. Nothing, just the sun beating down on my face and the smell of the bush being offended by that cheap little theater. "You know who I am, don't you?" I asked without changing my tone. She replied that she did. She said that my position was honorable, but that no position is above community norms. That brought a laugh straight from my liver. I went home, had my coffee, and put on my uniform. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted her to see the coat of arms, the badge, the royal authority. I drove back in the official truck with the radio on just so she could hear the dispatcher's frequency. I got out of the car with the posture of someone who has seen something much more serious than a fake cone fence. I started removing the obstacles one by one. I took the cones and threw them in the trunk. I tore the skull tape with my boot. The easels fell to the ground with a light push, all in serene tranquility. She came running. "This is an abuse of power," she shouted. "I'll take it to the committee." I shrugged. I spoke just one sentence. "The only committee that matters is on my radio." The neighborhood began to show up, attracted by the noise. Some were filming, others laughing. One even brought a folding chair and sat down to watch. It was the event of the week. When everything was cleared up, I stopped, looked at her, and left a final warning. Obstruction of private property is a crime. If you do it again, it won't be yellow tape that protects you. It'll be a court hearing. I went back inside the farm, with the truck's tires crunching on the gravel like applause. But inside I knew this woman wasn't going to stop there, and I, despite my authority, was going to have to teach her more than just a legal lesson. It was time to show what happens when you challenge those who know the law and live to apply it. The day after the lockdown, I thought the outbreak had passed. You know that feeling when a tantruming child finally gets tired of screaming and takes a nap? That's what I imagined. But underestimating certain types of people is a mistake that even the uniform doesn't protect against, especially when the creature in question doesn't understand the difference between legitimate authority and a cardboard power fantasy. The woman disappeared for 2 days, no sign of her. No emails in the HOA's inbox, no notes stuck in mailboxes. I was about to celebrate the truce when the phone at the police station rang. The voice on the other end was the reporter from the local newspaper, the one that looks more like a supermarket flyer with headlines like, "Man sees Jesus in the shape of a cloud and wins scratch card." She wanted an interview about the community lockdown case involving a sheriff and the Residents Association. The way she spoke sounded like they were dealing with a diplomatic war between two countries. I refused, of course. I said I wasn't interested, that there was no crime in progress, and that it was all just a lame attempt by someone playing the victim because they can't hear the word no. But as soon as I hung up the phone, a message arrived in the city group with a link to an article. Local authority refuses to talk to HOA. Tension grows in rural community. In the body of the article, there was a twisted summary of the facts. According to the article, the president of the HOA had acted out of legitimate concern for the collective welfare and had been intimidatingly repressed by an armed officer misusing his public position. The words "abuse of power" appeared 3 times, and to make matters worse, there was a photo of my back, taken on the day of the blockade, with the caption, "Sheriff ignores appeals and undoes association ban." She really did try to invert history, again, and this time using the press as a shield. But there was one thing she hadn't counted on: my record. It only took 30 minutes for the whole city to be laughing at the story. Comments on the website ranged from, "Does she think the HOA is the police?" to, "This woman wants to plant sunflowers in other people's brains." People in rural areas started posting videos of their own tractors working happily to the sound of country music, with the hashtag Chassonnard Trotter Livre. It became a joke, and she became the center of it. But that didn't stop the creature. That same afternoon, she called an emergency HOA meeting. She tried to get the people in the neighborhood together, as if she were going to impeach the sheriff, I don't know. But no one showed up. The few who did went to watch and make fun. Still, she went on. She got up on a small makeshift stage made out of cardboard boxes, irony of ironies, with a portable microphone and a printed presentation full of graphics that said nothing. She claimed to have drawn up a complete dossier of alleged abuses on my part, tractor noise at inappropriate times, the smell of cattle pens on social event days, and even an alleged intimidating look she claimed to have received while crossing the street. The pinnacle was when she presented a colored pie chart with a community discomfort index. The largest slice was labeled "Hostile Environment Caused by Uncontrolled Agricultural Practices." Seriously, it said so. Nobody could take it seriously. The woman from the block above, the one who has already been fined by the HOA for using the trash can with the lid open, started laughing so hard that she knocked over her water bottle. One of the maintenance guys pretended to write it all down and then posted it in the neighborhood group. Next meeting, Karen presents the psychological impact of scarecrows on urban life. By the time I arrived, it was too late for her. I tried not to get involved, but she saw me coming and stopped everything. She pointed her finger at me as if she were in a courtroom in a bad movie. "He's using his position to intimidate the association. He's using his uniform as a symbol of repression," he shouted, his voice trembling with nervousness and the panic that only those who lose control feel. I stood still. I just stared. He should be serving the people, not suffocating the community with the smell of a farm. Someone coughed. Then there was laughter. First one, then 2. And soon the whole room was laughing, including even the grumpy old man from the fiscal committee, who usually doesn't smile even when he gets a discount on the market. The meeting ended without minutes, without applause, without anything. She left without a word, with the crumpled papers under her arm, tripping over one of her own easels. That should have been the end of it. It should have been. But of course it wasn't, because the next day when I thought everything was going to calm down, I discovered that she had done something else, something even more stupid. And then there was no more talking. The badge flashed and I acted like a sheriff, not a neighbor. The morning began with the smell of smoke, not the thick smoke that comes from a fire or a barbecue, but a strong chemical stench, as if someone had burned plastic with frying oil. I went out on the balcony thinking that some neighbor had decided to dispose of recyclable waste in the dumbest way possible. But the smell was coming from the entrance to my farm. More precisely, from the rural signpost I put there years ago. A pole that, until the night before, had stood firm, whole, and with the American flag flying, a symbol of local tradition and respect. Now the pole was on the ground, sawed off at the base, and the flag burnt. Yes, someone had had the audacity to set fire to the flag I was so proud to keep next to the farm sign. That wasn't vandalism. It was provocation, a direct attack, and not from just anyone, because on the ground next to what was left of the flag, there was a folded HOA pamphlet with the association's logo and a stamp with its name, as if leaving a signature. I took out my cell phone, took pictures, and recorded everything. Indignation boiled up inside, not just because of the invasion or the destroyed flag, but because we were now on another level. This was no longer a neighborhood pet peeve. It was a crime, and worse, it involved symbolism, violation of property, and an offense against the most basic thing in a small town, respect for those who built this land with real sweat and clay. I went straight to the police station. No uniform, no siren, just with the evidence in my hand and the kind of anger that has already passed boiling point. When I sat down at the desk, the officers on duty were silent. They knew that if I was there like that, it was serious business. I recorded the incident. I wrote down every detail. Then I went straight to the local prosecutor. I explained the history, showed the pictures, reported the pattern, and when I mentioned her name, he let out a sigh as if to say, "That woman again?" But that was just the background. What she didn't expect, not even in her dreams, was the notification, and it would be delivered by myself. I put on my uniform, the original one, the official one, with holster and badge shining on my chest. I got on the horse all right, because when the occasion calls for it, the entrance needs to be memorable. And if she thought she could rule the region with a pamphlet and a skull ribbon, then let her face the real figure of the law coming down the main street with a brown horse and the look of someone who didn't come to chat. I arrived in front of her house at 4 p.m. sharp. I didn't even have to knock. She was already on the balcony, peeking out from behind the curtain. She must have been expecting another outburst of power, another verbal clash, another attempt to pretend she lived in a parallel universe where sheriffs obey regulations invented at garage meetings. But he didn't speak. No speech. I just handed over the official notification. Printed, stamped, signed, crime of vandalism, damage to private property, destruction of a national symbol, and of course, recurrent obstruction of a legally registered rural area. She picked up the paper, read it quickly, then more slowly. Her eyes widened. Her mouth trembled, but no words came out. There was no way around it. No more jokes. There, she realized. The game was over. That same evening, a car from the town's law firm pulled up in front of her house. The lawyer got out with heavy footsteps, talking on the phone and holding a briefcase like he knew the size of the problem. The neighbors, of course, were all watching. The woman from the block above watched everything from her balcony, sipping iced tea with a smile. She said afterwards that she'd never seen anyone so white without sunscreen on, and the old man from the grocery store commented that it had been a long time since he'd seen someone get so scared without being mugged. But the best was yet to come, because the trial was going to go ahead. With witnesses and everything, I wasn't going to drop the charges, not this time, because it was no longer a personal matter. It was a principle, respect for the land, for history, for the people who build something real, without sitting in a condominium meeting deciding if the neighbor's flower is too flashy. And while she chased after defenses, documents, excuses, and tried to justify the unjustifiable, I just watched, with the peace of someone who doesn't need to raise their voice, because there's a law, because she holds office, and above all, because he's right. But at the end, then she decided to ask for help, and in the most pathetic way possible. She tried to turn the tables with emotional blackmail, a last desperate act to escape absolute shame. Her attempt to reverse everything came too late, but it wasn't for lack of creativity. When the chips were down, when the police report turned into a formal lawsuit, when the lawyer started charging by the hour, and the neighbors started crossing the street just so they wouldn't share a sidewalk with her, then she tried what for her was the last card, crying. It happened on a cloudy Tuesday, one of those days when the sky looks like a mood mirror from the countryside. I was at the police station organizing reports from the rural patrol when the trainee came in all awkward, saying that a woman wanted to talk to me. She said it was important, private, and needed to be dealt with off the record. When I saw her walk in, I couldn't believe it. She was dressed in beige with a scarf around her neck and the look of someone who had cried just to soften her eyes. The woman who until last week said I was abusing my position was now there, meeker than a lamb in a procession. She came with a folder of documents under her arm and an embarrassed little smile that looked like it had come from a YouTube tutorial on how to fake regret in 3 steps. "Sheriff, can I talk to you for a minute? Just the 2 of us." I nodded and took her into the back room. Not because I thought she deserved it, but because I like to give people room to dig their own holes with their bare hands. She started talking. She talked a lot about how she was under pressure, that she only wanted what was best for the community, that she may have overdone the protocols, all wrapped up in a posh vocabulary that tried to sound polite while asking for a break. Then he took an envelope out of his bag. "It's a settlement proposal. No lawsuit, no press, no headaches." I opened it. The proposal was ridiculous. A handwritten letter saying that it recognized the disagreement, that it was willing to pay part of the damages, as long as the case was closed immediately and no legal action was pursued. She called it civilized conciliation. I looked at her, at that forced countenance of someone drowning, trying to look elegant, and I let the silence hang for a while. "Do you know what bothers me most about all this?" I said, looking into her eyes. "It wasn't the broken pole, not the flag you burned, nor the cones, the yellow tape, or the pathetic theater of the meeting. It was the way you tried to turn everything into a war that only existed in your head. And then you wanted to become a martyr for your own mess." She tried to swallow. Her eyes filled with water, but they didn't drain. Enough drama to seem sincere, but not enough to convince. "I can apologize," she mumbled. I got up from my chair, picked up the envelope, tore it open in front of her and threw it in the trash. "The only thing you have to do is attend the hearing, with a lawyer, and preferably with less fantasy and more respect for this place." She left the room without looking back, and she never went back to the police station. It was the lawyer who handled everything. He tried to downgrade the case, wind up the judge, ask for deadlines. Nothing stuck. The evidence was clear. The videos, the photos, the neighbors' statements, everything pointed to her. She tried to claim confusion, stress, even psychological problems. Nothing worked. At the hearing, it was like a play rehearsed in reverse. With every answer she gave, the judge frowned a little more. When asked why she had used fake official symbols to block the entrance to the farm, she stammered. When asked about the sawn-off pole, she said she thought it was community property, and about the flag, she tried to say it was a climatic accident. Nobody believed him. The verdict came quickly: guilty of vandalism, obstruction of private property, and attempting to unduly intimidate an authority. Heavy fine, compulsory public retraction, and the most symbolic, loss of her position as president of the HOA, with a 10-year ban on running for any association in the state. Yes, the judge wanted to ensure that she never tried to play street mayor again. The city's newspaper, the same one that published the first biased article, now had the headline: "Former HOA president is convicted of vandalism against own sheriff." The photo was of her leaving the courthouse with the conviction papers in her hand, and the expression of someone who has swallowed an entire ear of corn. The headline of the next article was even better: "Between cones and ropes, justice prevailed." After that, the woman disappeared. Literally. She disappeared from the neighborhood, sold her house in a hurry, and is said to have gone to live with a cousin in another county where no one knows her background. No one missed her. The new resident of the house turned the backyard into a real community garden, where the kids plant tomatoes and no one gets a ticket for fence coloring. As for me, I carried on with my routine. The farm stands firm, the new flag waving proudly, and the cones, they're in storage, on the wall of the shed, like trophies, to remind everyone, Prananad and myself, that anyone who tries to become a lying sheriff in a town where the law is taken seriously will end up the right way, in humiliation. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.